Is that you, John Wayne? Is this me? No, actually, it's not the Duke, it's the Dude. Jeff Bridges reteams with the Coen brothers in True Grit. This is a remake, of course, of the 1969 classic starring John Wayne, and this is an Academy Award nominee for Best Picture of 2010. I think this is an important movie for two main reasons. The first being, in an age of remakes where everything's getting remade, reimagined, rebranded, what have you, this is a perfect example of how it can be done right, with the right intentions behind it, and how it can indeed surpass the original movie. Like, I do like the original True Grit quite a bit, and of course, most fans of John Wayne, or film fans in general, would probably know that that's the movie where he won the Academy Award for Best Actor, so that's kind of notable for that movie. And it's a terrific Western with a really good cast. Kim Darby, even Robert Duvall, and fucking Dennis Hopper. I think that was his first movie too. And there's some crazy story about him being like high on acid and John Wayne like running around and trying to shoot him. Anyway, but I think this is a case where these filmmakers, the Coen brothers, of course, great filmmakers. No need to, you don't need me to tell you that. But they obviously saw something in that original story, in that original source material, where they kind of thought, we could re-envision this. We could go back to the source material. It is based on a novel as well, and we can make something out of this, and we can maybe give it deeper levels, make it look like a different kind of Western, things like that. So I think it was done with the right intentions, and I do absolutely think it is a better movie than the original True Grit. So that's a rare thing. So I think that's one of the key important things about this movie, is that it was able to surpass the original film. And I also think it's important because it does kind of, this movie's 5 years old at this point, but it kind of reminded us as audiences that we still like Westerns. Everyone always says, oh, the Western is dead, and nobody's, going to see Westerns anymore. But every so often, Western will come out and kind of change things up a little bit, and audiences are reminded of that. And I remember it was a fairly big hit. If I remember correctly, like when it first came out, it didn't like debut at the box office at number one, but like in a very rare kind of occurrence, it went to number one like in its second or even like third week or something. So that's kind of a rare occurrence. So that kind of shows that even like word of mouth can still bring asses to the seats, basically. So that's living proof of that, and how the Western still has some pull in today's superhero centric type of audience base. So there's that. And obviously the key thing about this movie is one, we have the Coen brothers expertise at the helm. So one, it's a great looking movie. Like, the cinematography is absolutely excellent. I think it's of course Roger Deakins did the cinematography, so it's absolutely beautiful. Great set design, great visuals of the film. Like, there are many parts of this movie that look almost dreamlike, that look almost surreal. Like, we see those dark nighttime scenes with like the snow slowly falling. It's quite beautiful, actually. And scenes in the woods covered in snow, scenes in the town, in kind of our, going from that sort of normal environment of, like, the old Western town that we all know about. It looks the way we kind of envision it. But then going off into their journey, of course, it is the story about Matty Ross, whose father was killed by some punk ass, gambler, drunk, thief. This time he's played by Josh Brolin, great in his role, and she wants to get justice, so she hires a U.S. Marshal, Rooster Cogburn, and that's of course Jeff Bridges in his role, and another Texas Ranger, Matt Damon, and they all kind of go along and search for this fugitive, basically. And that's the story of the movie, and it kind of reaches sort of deep into ideas of what exactly is justice, justice or revenge. What's the difference between that? Because this character played by Haley Atwell, this was her debut movie as far as I know. She was nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress, even though you could argue she's the lead of the film. But she's a very determined character, and the performance is great. She's headstrong. She knows exactly what she wants, but obviously she's she's a little kid. She's like 14 years old. She can't go off and hunt this guy herself, so she needs a little bit of help. So we sense her determination. Almost unflinching. She knows exactly what she wants to do. She wants her own version of justice, which is this guy needs to die, basically. So that's what it's all about. And meanwhile, there's some arguments among her fellowship that we can bring him to, I think it must be Texas. So like, there's a price on his head. We can get some good money. We'll bring him there. She's like, no, we're not going to do that. So all the little quabbles along the way and things like that, and how it's really kind of a case of it's more than they bargained for kind of movies. And the movie's a little bit older, so I'll say spoiler warnings now. Kind of the interesting thing about the movie is where it sort of lands on that distinction between, is it justice, is it revenge? Clearly, I mean, it is revenge. So anyone with revenge in their heart, they're of course, in a movie like this, they're going to have to pay a price for it. And that's kind of what it amounts to, where Ross, she does finally get the opportunity to kill this guy, and we see in that scene, like, in part it's self-defense, but she maybe could have, got some help. But when she shoots him, of course, in that scene, she falls into that pit. So maybe it's like symbolic, like, okay, you got your revenge, but you're going to fall into this pit of that you can't get out of, or something like that. So she does kind of pay a price for it. And maybe that's where, she ends up getting bitten by a snake, she loses her arm, and that kind of sucks. But one thing I'll say about the movie that I'm still kind of on the fence about is its ending. Like, I'll say the ending is kind of a bummer. What can I tell you? And I know it's like, well, come on, what do you want? It to be a happy ending and they're all singing and dancing, yay, we killed this guy? I don't know, but it's kind of a funny thing that the Coen brothers, this is like their first movie in quite some time that actually had an ending. Like, there was always these criticisms about, No Country for Old Men, how it didn't have a fucking ending. It just, like, cut in the middle of Tommy Lee Jones's sentence. Meanwhile, that's exactly how the book ended. And with A Serious Man, it just kind of cuts to black as well, right before we think something's going to happen. So with those movies, we almost, like, kind of have to fill in the ending ourselves. But here, it's almost like their response to that. So they're like, oh, you don't like our endings? Well, fuck you. Here's an elongated ending that shows you exactly what happens to these characters all these years later, and we're going to bum you the fuck out. So she grows up to be kind of a bitter old woman, and Rooster Cogburn dies, and, she never got maybe the revenge out of her heart and never learned to love or anything like that. She was, oh, I never married. I'm a bitter old maid. Who has time for that? And she's, kind of, we see in that scene, I forget what she says, she goes to, like, the carnival or whatever, where Rooster Cogburn was, and they tell her that he had died, and she's like, oh, keep your seat, you trash, because the guy didn't stand up in the presence of a woman. But whatever, she's just a bitter person. So that kind of sucks, I would say. Again, I can't say, oh, it should have been this celebratory ending where everyone's happy, but at the same time, it's kind of a bummer. But these are harsh lessons that we learn in the Old West. So maybe that it's a necessary move of the movie to get us to get out of that mindset of the old classic Western where, oh, there's good guys, there's bad guys, and everybody, wins in the end. But then again, I mean, something like Unforgiven already did that, and arguably it did it better. So there's that. But still, I think it's a great movie. Obviously, filled with great performances. Jeff Bridges is fucking amazing in this movie. He was nominated for Best Actor for this. If he hadn't have won the year previous for, what was it, Crazy Heart, I think he might have won this. Like, it's a great role. It really is. And I think the kind of key thing, even if you know the original film inside out, John Wayne is like the last fucking thing from your mind when you're watching him in this movie. It's something completely different. So I think that's key to the performance and key to why they made this re-envisionment in the first place, So they made it their own. He's not doing like a John Wayne impression. They're not capitalizing on the success of John Wayne and the reputation of the original movie. They're making it their own thing. So I think that's an important thing when it comes to remakes, and why I think this still stands as one of the best remakes ever, really. So kudos to the Coen brothers, kudos to Mr. Bridges, and kudos to the supporting cast, Brolin, Atwell, and Barry Pepper, by the way, playing Ned Pepper. He's great in the movie too, though he does actually kind of do sort of a Robert Duvall impression, which is kind of interesting. I think he's kind of the unsung hero of this movie, though, because it's a really interesting performance. I really like him in this movie, and of course, Haley Atwell, kind of a revelation, but we haven't seen her too much after this. Like, I know wasn't she in like Ender's Game, that huge smash hit? But now I think she's like a pop star or something. I think she has like one or two hits on the Billboard. But I digress. True Grit. It's a great film. Definitely surpasses the original. Should it have deserved to have won Best Picture? I'd say maybe not. Like I'd say, there's a lot in that year, Inception and The Social Network and The King's Speech. I'd say this is better than The King's Speech, if that means anything. But definitely one of the best westerns to come out in recent years. So if you're a fan of westerns or the Coen brothers, definitely check this out if you haven't already. It's well worth checking out. So that's my review of True Grit. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. Visit Derek237.com. Keep an eye out for more 31 Days of Oscar reviews. I'll be doing some more. And until next time, fill your hands, you son of a bitch. I'll see you later.